Hey everyone.
Welcome to Plotting, a podcast about gaming, education, and everything in between. I'm Adam.
And I'm Charles. We hope you remember to share and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday. And today's
Welcome back,
episode
everyone.
is
How to be a gamer if you're a teacher, and how to be a teacher if you are a gamer.
excellent. I've been, really looking forward to this. I think it's a really natural first, early episode for our series. So
Definitely.
I guess which one should we start with? Should we start with the question of how to be a teacher if you're a gamer, or how to be a gamer if you're a teacher?
I think I would go how to be a gamer if you're a teacher first. I think that is probably more relevant to our audience.
All right. I definitely agree. Let's begin with, so there is a lot of teachers in this world, and I think that not enough of them have real experience in the gaming lifestyle, which, me and you identify with. So
Clearly.
let's lay out a roadmap for them and maybe talk a little bit about why. So let's say a teacher wants to get into gaming, and for whatever reason, we'll discuss some whys in a bit. What would you suggest to be the best way to get into gaming? Just simple, flat question.
The best way to get into gaming. Well, to me, gaming always comes back to my friends and family, and on a broader level, getting in a good social experience. And so the first thing I would do if I was totally new to it, didn't know, what I would like, is I would check in with my immediate social circle, see if any of them have recommendations. Probably you're going to find at least one person who has something they're super excited to show you. So that would be my recommendation. What do you think about that?
You brought up like a good point about you'll sometimes hear people ask, they're like, should I get the PlayStation or the Xbox? And the answer is, what do your friends have? Like, ultimately, yes, there's console exclusives, and they do have some benefits and minuses with cost and whatever. But like, really, the only answer is get what your local vicinity has. So in these days, it's like the Switch or those two. So I definitely think that's a great way to start. I also think, I read this guide once when I was younger. This is like a long time ago. And it was like, how to get your girlfriend into gaming. Okay. And I was like, that's what I want to do one day. And then what they suggested was the first step, get your partner. I said, is what we should say it. Get your partner into gaming, because you're a gamer. And you're like, how do I get my partner in gaming? Get them a device. Okay, that's good enough to do it. So like you said, it's like figure out which device. But in this case, mine was written for PC gamers in mind. And then they suggested The Sims is what they suggested as like the number one game to get maybe new people that don't have a lot of gaming experience. So how do you feel about, do you think that's a good route? Their explanation was, it's just like, one, it's a terribly addicting game, incredibly fun for people. Although now that we're going down this line, I do wonder if it might have been more focused on like in a sexist route. So maybe we shouldn't go farther. But really, The Sims is a great game for people of all genders and ages. And I think what made it especially appealing is that it was being one player. Really, I think takes off a lot of pressure, because what I've found is when trying to get new friends into gaming, sometimes if you're like, hey, you're going to play games with me? Excellent. Let me introduce you to Dota. Like, it's so hard to be in like a team-based game where people rely on you. So maybe it's like, what I'm trying to say is co-op games, which for our audience, I should say, is cooperative games where the players work on a team instead of
very true.
More versus games where it's you against other people, possibly against your friend.
I would definitely say, I don't know. I haven't played The Sims in a very long time. I don't even know if there's been multiple editions.
I don't think there's new ones. I think I
probably just played the original Sims, maybe.
Oh, well.
But what I can say for sure is that something that guide sort of clued into is think about your audience, and whether your audience is yourself, you're trying to get into gaming, or maybe you're trying to convince your friend or significant other who is a teacher that they should get into gaming. And I think bridging the gap by starting with a topic that they're interested in is a really great way to do it. And I do think you're probably right to say go with the co-op route first, though I'm sure that's not correct for everyone. Again, it's all about, you know, what is your intended participant, again, whether that's you or someone else, enjoy. Because I know some people who you don't just absolutely love to be in that competitive place, and they want to have a winner and a loser. Like at the end of the day, they want to know if they won or lost and the metrics by which they can improve. And if that's you, then maybe start out with something a little more competitive. But again, it's all about catering to your audience so that you know, have a good first experience, because it all comes back to first experiences with everything in life.
That's fair. And I like that you're pointing out that it is really personalized. It's really about, and I mean, in this case, with our target audience of being teachers who are, or educators, people in the education field who are curious about getting into gaming for various reasons, really what are they going to stick with? So I do think a common reason why I would encourage teachers, or I mean, there's a lot of reasons. But one of the main reasons why I would encourage teachers to get into gaming is that a lot of the same strategies in gaming, I think a lot of the same skills or strategies can be applied to a classroom, because there's this movement in some education circles towards gamification. Okay. And it's so weird to me to see like teachers, abstractly studying gamification, almost like from a psychological perspective, or like Skinner boxes, when in reality, I don't know, I think there's a lot of value to be had from exploring a lot of these gaming experience. Modern games firsthand are like, some of them are well-tuned machines that I think you could bring a lot of those ideas, I guess, into your classroom or into your whatever educational occupation.
Definitely. I would say, coming from, more the corporate side of education myself, but I would say I'm semi-regarded as a gamification expert, at least within the organizations I've worked with. It is funny, people really like mull over this and spend a lot of time trying to come with the perfect badge that will, incentivize people to finish their 3-hour, training that they have to do.
Yeah.
And it's like, rather than theorize it and try and come up with like perfect like color palette and like what's a snappy name for your badge or anything like that, like there's so many more examples, right? As with everything in the world, like globalization and the internet have brought us just like a wide variety of examples. So just go out there and see what's there, because probably you could learn from what others are doing rather than have to reinvent the wheel, is what I would say. I'm sorry, my dog is knocking stuff over.
So maybe I'm leaning more towards, let's go down this thread a bit more. I feel like starting with the how is maybe the wrong direction, or I wonder, let's start with the why.
Sure,
why
yeah,
should more teachers be gamers? And whatever that means to you. And I guess should we back up even further? What's a gamer? What does it mean to be a gamer? How are you defining that?
I do think that's actually a good idea. It actually kind of jumped into my mind when we were just discussing earlier the personalization and the individuality of the experience. I think especially with sort of the like older audience that I work with, they hear like a gamer and they get this one vision in their mind.
Is it the South Park one? Like, is that what
it might be the South Park one, or maybe it's something a little closer to home. It's like they remember their like brother when he was 16, just like sitting in the basement with the dial-up modem, like monopolized for hours, and when in reality, gaming has encompassed so much more than that. I mean, you and I did a real life adventure game at one point where we were literally running around our at that time, my home city, your continual home city of San Diego. And, like if you're a really athletic, outdoorsy person, that's still a game, and you can still take the principles and the strategies and apply them elsewhere. But you're never going to get to dig into that if you don't engage at all.
So I agree.
So to me, everyone's a gamer. I think everyone can find a game that they love. But I guess at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to for me.
Okay, we're all gamers, but I guess, is there any value towards moving? So maybe gamer is the wrong term then? Are we going for what? Geekiness? Geeky nerddom? What, like, what are we, what's worth, if every teacher is somewhere on the gaming spectrum? Okay, I mean, sure, every teacher's somewhere on it, and there is extremes on both ends. Why should teachers, in that case, move along it? What is the advantage to moving along the gaming spectrum towards being more of a gamer? Someone who either plays more video games or more tabletop games or gamifies aspects of their life. Because like a really fascinating, to me, I'm seeing my wife do this a lot, right? There's a lot of gamification in athletics. Like, what do you think Fitbits are? Like they're literally in many ways gamification. Like,
Oh,
it's
absolutely.
you now have an XP bar for your steps for the day and for your calories and for your heart rate. And you're like, yeah, I got to keep these bars before, above a certain level or hit a certain amount. So
Yeah.
yes, what is the advantage to moving farther along it then?
Well, I think there's probably a lot of advantages if you do teach in a traditional environment. But even if you teach in a non-traditional environment, the workforce is just going to keep getting younger. And for, those who are going to be coming into the workforce in the next like 10, 20 years, like gaming, whether that's on a PC, their PS4, or just on their phones or tablets that have been ubiquitous for them since, almost birth, gaming has been a huge part of their life. And so if you can't even connect to that at all, it's going to be very hard to, establish connections, whether in a educational sense or in a professional sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I was thinking I read an article about how the average gamer, depending on with the broadest definition, which is probably the most inclusive, the average gamer is a girl. And that was like mind blowing to me. And it's because we all have gaming devices. It's our cell phones, and we play. There's like a ton of very popular mobile games.
Oh yeah, Candy Crush.
Yeah,
I mean, Farmville. If you go far back to like the early Facebook
I really
days,
do miss
right?
that. That was like the predecessor to Harvest Moon. I think. It came after, but I feel like it like now where everyone I can talk to about Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon. I'm like, yeah,
it's just like Farmville.
Yeah. Okay. I also think you hit on an important point of, so again, coming from a very traditional teaching environment, but like, a teacher with children, I think
the K-12 classroom.
Yes. Like you said, an incredible amount of your audience is going to be, gamers or like, students farther along the gaming spectrum because, for a lot of them, they're younger. They have the internet since they were born. And like to be able to connect with them and to be able to like, is manipulate the wrong word, to like, motivate them, engage with them. How about to engage with them?
Sure.
Like you got to be able to meet them each halfway. And it's like, to me, different teachers are always going to, sorry, there you go. Different teachers are always going to click better with certain students or be able to engage certain students or reach students in a certain way. And I think as an educator, you have a duty, you really do, to just keep broadening your interests and your hobbies and keep growing, setting not just the example of like a growth mindset for your students, not being like, I'm old, so I don't like that thing. Like, but being like, oh, it's new to me. I'm excited and curious about it. And again, just like, as you broaden your, it's nice to be like, I'm a little bit of an artist. I'm a little bit of a logistician. I'm a little bit of a reader. I'm a little bit of a Harry Potter nerd, but like also an athlete, a little bit going into like tropes now. But like, I do think like teachers that are going to grow and keep up with their students, a major political party, a major faction of their class, has this interest. So it's really, if you want to connect with them, the point is move along the spectrum, the gaming. So,
which actually brings me to something that I have heard expressed a few times, actually, from people who work in the K-12 classroom still. And what they ask me or say to me is sort of, Adam, I do like games, actually. I play them or I'm more interested in playing them more, but I'm worried that if my students, find out that I'm a gamer, they'll want to play with me, and I'll lose all sense of authority. Like, I still have to have classroom discipline, and I don't want to have to be like negotiating some like trade deal on my 15-minute break. So I guess I would ask you, as someone who does actively game with your students, not on all of your various gaming platforms, I'm sure, but I know you at least play a few things with them. Do you feel like that is a pressing problem? Is that something that teachers need to worry about?
Oh, I don't think it's a problem at all if you draw certain lines. I mean, being a teacher, there's definite boundaries for a lot of reasons. But one boundary to be like, no, I'm not going to play with you when I'm at home. Like things like that. I mean, maybe these days because we're always at home, but like, I'm not going to play with you outside of school things. I also, would never friend a student. Especially because I teach middle school, but even them, they're young kids. Like, I would never befriend a student on a gaming platform. I'm just not ready for that yet. I do not need, even if I'm not playing like a violent game with them, I just know I'll be on like Xbox and I'm like, time to load up this like violent game. And then some student, I just would be like, oh, Mr. Cooper is playing that. So, with some boundaries, I think you are kind of throwing away a big opportunity if you are a gamer. Not just, and even if you're like, I won't ever play students. Even if that's where your line is, you could still connect a lot. Like being able to discuss a current game they're on, everyone these days is playing Among Us. And before that, it was Fall Guys game. Yes, which I did play a bit, despite the fact that I hesitated over how to say the name. And then before that, like Fortnite, I'm sure Minecraft. Like, I think there's a lot of value, like in anything. Again, it's like just because maybe your school doesn't, I'm trying to draw like another analogy. Just because you don't have like a basketball court at your school doesn't mean you can't discuss sports with your kids. And if anything, doing that, boom, suddenly those kids that are into sports really, I've read that the #1 correlation with student success over every other metric is just rapport with the teacher, like beyond everything else. Like there is, obviously there's like better teaching strategies and obviously better there's other factors, but the major correlation one is rapport. Because, honestly, if a kid wants to please you and a kid wants to, achieve for you in some ways, which isn't the ideal, I guess, motivation. We want more intrinsic, but like it just, lubricates, or it just facilitates all the rest of the things you're doing. If they like you, if they already like, oh, he gets me. And to some degree, this person's more relatable, more on like they're not like some floating above me robot immortal teaching, passing down wisdom, and like, I don't know. So I definitely think, yeah.
I definitely think that's true. That's so funny. You just sparked a memory for me. When I was an undergrad in college, so longtime listeners will know that I come from a family of academics, and I have had an academic mindset for a long time, from far too young, many would say. But that's what happens when you grow up in a house with that many PhDs bumping around the walls. And so, I'm a freshman in college. I'm really excited. I'm taking my first classes and talking to my parents on the weekend, like any good freshman in college. Maybe not Friday night, but on the weekends. And my mom's like,
for doing grades,
okay.
So yeah.
Oh yeah, obviously. And my mom's like, okay, well, which classes are you liking? And I tell her, and I remember at the time I had this history of race in America. Not a topic that obviously a very interesting topic, very deep topic, but not a topic that it is, funny, I guess I would say. And yet, I guess what stuck out to my mom when she listened to my description of how much I was loving this class is she's thinking, you really are engaging with this material because the teacher is teaching it in this very approachable and funny way. Like, not that he was making light of big serious moments, but he was trying to find the silver border on those clouds. And as I moved along through my college career, she noted this a few more times. And then when I was, I think, probably a junior in college, I was talking to her. I was like, oh, all right, like, what are you up to this week, Mom? And she's like, oh, I'm trying to put some jokes into my lectures because I realized after listening to you talk about the classes that you liked, that my students might engage more if I was more funny, more approachable. and you know, obviously you don't have to be doing stand-up comedy while you're teaching, but every little thing that you can do to break down that barrier um, is just going to add to the experience and make any kind of learner more excited about what you are clearly passionate about if you're teaching it. So yeah, that's just what sparked for me.
I mean, I definitely agree with that. And like, to me, if you're gonna, and this is, you know, in yet it's never ideal, this for viewers, like it's never ideal to be a lecture style teacher, very like top down. But if you are going to be one, like what separates you from like a recording? What separates you from like Khan Academy? Like how am I beating Khan Academy if I'm even like, you know, giving like really good examples and stuff? And I think a lot of that is rapport building. It's a lot about showing, you know, connecting the students on any level, even if you're in a big lecture hall, being like personable, being like, I'm a human too. So I like that a lot.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that's super important too right now, right? With COVID, I mean, we're all adapting to new lives, and many people haven't gone back to the classroom environment that they're used to across all sorts of levels of learning. You know, how are you making your e-learning experience, we'll call it your distance learning experience, any better than your student just, you know, searching on YouTube,
Yeah.
you know, whatever topic you teach, and then following along? You have to do something, because otherwise, what's the point, I guess?
I mean, definitely.
A little drab there, but
I mean, well, to answer that question on a bit of an off topic, it's like the answer there is more interaction, especially interaction between students. I see a lot of online teachers these days, you know, again, just going back on their straight lectures, and you're like, you really got to differentiate yourself from a video. Like that's the current challenge. Okay, so moving back to moving along
topic
the
at hand.
spectrum. Yeah, because I feel like
Sure.
I can rant about distance learning.
Oh, easily, right? I mean, it's top of mind.
What games? So like, you asked me about like playing games with kids. I do think there is. I want to plug a few games here, because you know they're gonna sponsor Assume. I assume Minecraft is amazing.
Very soon, no doubt.
Like,
yeah,
I run a Minecraft realm for the students, and it is just like so incredible to. I mean, during the school year and outside the school year, you know, like in distance learning. This isn't outside the school year, but in class and outside of, you know, once we're at distance learning, that game has been incredible. So I do think, and like playing that with some of my students has been just such an amazing like team building experience. And I think it actually kind of is teaching them some creativity, not just like, because Minecraft naturally teaches creativity, maybe like building stuff, but I think them seeing me work to like implement like fun things in it. I don't know, to me, any chance to be, is that vulnerability? Any chance to be honest maybe with your students, to be like, I'm trying this thing, it might not work. Like, hey, let's do this housing contest in Minecraft just as like a side art project, or like, let's do this like blah, blah, blah. I don't know. Gaming, there's 1,000 games, and I can't wait to talk about each of them with you, and you'll see just how many rich opportunities they provide.
Definitely. And to further plug Minecraft, potentially for the more, you know, data-driven among us, there are some great research studies out there. When I was doing my master's degree, I actually studied a few of them about tangible benefits that students can get from Minecraft, you know, in terms of just geometry and like, you know, because it is a very geometric world. And so yeah, not to plug Minecraft too hard here, but
I mean, Minecraft EDU is amazing, is what I'd say. Like, I explored it a bit. Honestly, like at my current job, when I applied here, they're like, show us an innovative lesson plan. And I wrote, like, I found a Minecraft like lesson plan and I adapted it, which is not quite pirating. It's not quite plagiarism. No, but I did. And I was like, yeah, here's how I would adapt this to like my specific classroom. And maybe that got me my job. So maybe this is like a self-sustaining cycle, you guys. Gaming helps me, and now here I am helping gaming.
Perfect, yeah. So you said you were going to plug a few games.
Oh, what are some other good educational games? So, I mean, we're going to have a whole episode about virtual reality, is what I'd say. Definitely, there's some
we have an expert here on the show.
VR games that, because unfortunately, fortunately or unfortunately, maybe a VR was like one of the few what I'd call like gaming devices I guess I've had in my room. So that's what a lot of my experience is going to be with. I think that I wish that Among Us was more school appropriate, because I think that that style of game could be really good for educators.
Definitely. I mean, if nothing else, I think the social opportunities in that game are through the roof, right?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, I've been playing it with like my college friends lately, and it's kind of incredible. I feel like you're learning a lot about people by playing it. Not like who are they? Are like, oh, they're a murderer, but like, oh, like you, who can lie? Like who's lying? Who's like I don't know. What I'd say is you can learn a lot about people by playing it in like in a way that'd be fascinating, I assume, for a teacher to learn about their students, and the students learn about their teacher. And then I don't know, it's a great team building cooperative activity in general. You know, 4 of you are on the same team, or
I'll take the moment, since we're talking about the lessons that Among Us has in terms of like social interaction and deductive reasoning, to plug a game called The Resistance, good old,
Yes.
card and cardboard game. And maybe not themed appropriately for really young kids, but at the same time, you could very easily recreate a similar concept. You might need to simplify the gameplay a little bit for younger kids, though it's already pretty simple. Similar attributes you have of everyone playing. There are some people whose objectives are working against the objectives of everyone else, and you have to identify through a series of actions and encounters who those people are before they fail the mission for everyone else. But I think if that's the kind of experience that you want to add to your teaching, I would just recommend The Resistance here.
That would be a good substitute for Among Us if I wasn't at online teaching. But yeah, any sort of those mafia
true.
style
Card and cardboard is hard right now, obviously.
werewolf games. Yeah, I mean, back when we were in person, what I'd say is I think I got a lot of bang for my buck for board games. Obviously, Dungeons and Dragons, because I ran a Dungeons and Dragons club. But a lot of those board games, I think, a lot of those gaming clubs in general, and I'm just thinking like just random board games, even ones that aren't focused on education, are just such rich, again, get to know you, team building, rapport building little friendships in your class between students that like don't have friends. Like there's so many just periphery benefits, maybe like both direct and indirect benefits to not being afraid to embrace like literal games. And this is like a whole different type of gamification, I would say. Like gamification is often, I feel like, divided into two subcategories, because like the literal definition of gamification, what we're discussing is like almost like the psychology, like how can I make my life or my exercise or my teaching more like a video game, more there's things giving me dopamine spurts, I guess, when I'm doing the right thing to motivate me to make the right decisions. But I also think gamification in the sense of like literally exploring existing games to educate kids or to build a community and stuff like that is another great reason to, indulge in moving along the gaming spectrum as a teacher.
Yes. Yeah. And, I don't want to take too much time on this, but I would say that, given that the topic of this episode is, being a teacher, a gamer, or a gamer teacher, that's sort of why we're talking about that. Gamification of your normal learning activities is absolutely a worthy topic that I'm sure we could spend many hours on, and probably will further down the line.
We're going to definitely have a whole like pure gamification episode is what I'd say. Yeah.
For sure. But that's why we're probably dismissing it a little more out of hand than may sound, righteous to some of you, I guess.
they're not exploring that. Feels like the first step. Maybe we should go to the next topic, and then we can blend back and forth. So, hey gamers, half of you that have maintained through that first part of our podcast and then didn't leave. Are you considering education? Yeah, is that why you're listening to our podcast? Are you just some cool gaming fan who's like, maybe I want to be an educator one day? Let's tell you about why you should get into teaching, because you've got some important skills to bring. I mean, the first of which is that we've already discussed. It's really incredibly valuable for diversity in teachers on like every level. I'm taking every definition of diversity. And I mean, being someone who's into gaming, being a millennial or younger, no, that's unfair, I guess. There's old people that game. Anyone who's older than me, by the way, I classify as older. So, but like being someone who's a gamer, being someone who plays video games or tabletop RPGs, you can bring an incredibly unique perspective. You can be an incredibly powerful, unique role model for students that need it, for people that need it. What else?
Well, I want to tack on, outside of being in front of the classroom, obviously this is speaking a little more closely to my experience than to yours. There's a huge need for people who are passionate about gaming and education, not just because of the, the social benefits and the rapport building, but literally because teachers like yourself who would like to have, some games that they can play with their kids, and even those who don't, but, want something cool to download to the iPad that like, a few kids can play or whatever. That market is filled with so much bad content, and we are going to spend some time on that later on in the show.
We should do like a hit list episode, like here's why this thing is terrible.
yeah, exactly. But if you are passionate about gaming, and even if you're a little passionate about education, I think education games are sort of too easy to develop potentially because everyone thinks they know how to do it, right? It's like everyone played their version of like Math Blasters or Spelling Dunk or, whatever super easy math or spelling or, English game that you had on, or at least that I had on my, little PC in the basement as a kid.
Yeah.
Putt
Goes to the Moon. That's not an educational one, but I'm just remembering it was a great game.
No, but you're not going to engage today's youth or even today's non-youth with Math Blasters. I'll just put it that way. And so, and don't get me wrong, I love Math Blasters. Like for its time, way ahead. But there's a huge need for developers and project managers and all sorts to get together and build some really, really good, really amazing educational video games because we need them.
Yeah, this might be prejudiced of me, but I do think, like you said, well, like you alluded to, too many people get into that field without the is this like the Batman thing? I'm like, I need people that were like born in the darkness, not just ones that like adopted it. They were like, oh, I adopted gaming. I play some, and you're like, no, I want people that were like raised by World of Warcraft and like really immersed. And there's so many like, hidden lessons of it that I think you could apply in just a more real way and more natural way. Like you've seen developers make like, wow, they killed the whole community with that one move, or like they really like killed this game from this. There's so many, I don't know, small. Yeah, just mini lessons day to day that you couldn't like, teach someone in a lecture. Like, here's why you don't do this. Here's click. And then we go to like in these people I'm thinking about, like these gamers, like they've learned all those lessons and then they'll be able to apply it. Like, they've learned it in the trenches. They can apply it in such a real way to these apps or to these, or to educate, if you become like a formal teacher type thing. So, yeah,
definitely.
What I think is like quite a shame, and me and you have discussed this before, and this maybe us, we might have to cut this because it's selling out. Magic the Gathering, card games, Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon. Why is there no educational one? Like, would it kill the world to come out with like a collectible TCG trading card game? That's like, and I'm talking to you gamers, people that want to help out educators. Or, just dip in the education field. Make a Common Core aligned, and you got to make it good. It's got to at least be spoken in the same sentences as Pokemon, Magic Gathering, and Yu-Gi-Oh. And then, oh yeah, you play Common Core, Fantasyland World.
So shooting low here, I see. trying to break into like the big three off the bat. But no, it's true. I mean, I think TCGs are definitely a format that could benefit from an educator edition. But all sorts of games could really really use an educational.
I know. I'm telling you, like a lot of these that the world needs them. Like right now, if people are like looking for like what niche should I fill, like that niche is wide open, listeners.
Definitely
gamer listeners. How about what are some? So again, we're trying to lure these gamers and becoming teachers because me and you, we're doing a lot of work here. We're like, hey, teachers, be a bit more into gamers. You know, find ways to play Fortnite with your kids. Play the Fortnite, and then gamers.
Go on the Facebook after and brag about it.
let's convert some more gamers into teaching. What are some skills you think that gamer, is this too cheesy to go into? Well, but let's just do it. What are some skills that gamers, and teachers share? How about that? What are some?
All right. Yeah. So just some generic skills.
Generic. Honesty, valor,
bravery. I mean, that's kind of the same thing as valor. But I mean, for one, and I find that this is a skill that is strangely skipped over, maybe in the modern world. I think because there's an assumption that people have it, but just computer, like, digital interfacing skills, understanding quickly at a glance, being able to take away from a user interface, like in 30 seconds or a minute or less. You may not have all of the fine utility down, but sort of having a gist of like, okay, here's the main screen and over here's my menu. And, if I click the menu, like what are the 5 most important sub menus that I'm going to clearly see here? And, is there a toolbar of some kind? It seems like basic stuff, especially probably to the ideal audience here, people who have gamed passionately for a long time. But those skills are strangely lacking,
Technological literacy, you would not believe. Yeah. Like gamers, people are listening to this and are like, should I be a teacher one day? I don't know. Hey, the world needs new technologically literate teachers. And I guess you're right. That is kind of a baseline assumption that we can have for most of our, certainly the PC gamers, if not presumably many of the other styles. There are a lot of teachers who have they're doing their best. These are good teachers. I do not want to denigrate their efforts, but they are extremely, held back. They're at a big disadvantage by the lack of technological literacy. And again, there is no great way for them to adopt it. Like there is tech skills at the local library, or like my child will teach it to me. And like that, these are like some great tapes, like over this big hole. But like, again, people that have these skills that are so like fluid and natural, oh my gosh, you don't even know. Like, I feel like lesson planning is so much easier. I feel like adoption of new programs, because there is, like, we live in this great modern technological era of education, and there are some teachers that just, or like some school districts, what I say, because a lot of times it's more top down. So we're like, well, the principal doesn't want it, so we won't do it. But like, there are some teachers that are just so reluctant or don't have, it would just be really inefficient for them to explore them, right? Like they're like, oh, let me try out this new app. And you're like, man, you should be like in 10 seconds figuring out this is garbage. Or like, oh, in 10 seconds, you should be like, wow, this is really impressive. Or like, I don't know. There's so many levels of tech literacy that, again, facilitate effective teaching.
Yeah, absolutely. So getting beyond tech literacy to something that is a little bit more of like, I don't want to say a valued skill, but something that, people would put on their resume probably. Oh shoot, I had something in mind that I wanted to discuss.
I have an idea then. Or do you want me to?
Yeah, you go for it.
So I realize I just divided up even further. That's the few gamers that made this far. So you're not a PC gamer or, a technologically literate gamer. What I'll say is, hey, people that play other, tabletop RPGs is what I'm thinking. Like, a lot of the same skills, if you're like a DM, a lot of the same skills that you use in Dungeons and Dragons, flashback to that future and or past episode about this, is like a lot of the same skills you use as a teacher. Honestly, maybe it's more like improv. Is that the wrong vein?
No,
but
yeah.
like, yeah,
Well, but it's more than just
skills.
improv too, right? It's like, like table management shares a lot of elements with classroom management.
Oh, so much. Yeah. I got way better at both of them as I got better at both of them. like each of them feeds the other one.
Absolutely. And actually this feeds well into what I was wanting to say.
Good.
So thank you for sparking it for me. Teamwork. So we're speaking to the gamers right now, right?
Yeah.
Like, whether you play a video game or a card game, I'm sure we've all hit that, zero-sum game mentality, either ourselves or we've encountered it in a teammate, of, I'm just not going to do this. Like, I'm not going to engage. Even though I'm here playing this game, like, I'm just going to intentionally not do well.
It's like sitting in the fountain in Dota. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Or even, going beyond that to like denigrating your teammates' efforts, right?
Oh, yeah. And you're like, man, this is not helpful. like
no, like
that person knows they messed up. We don't need to rub their face in it.
Exactly. And that exactly is what I want to address, right? Like, if you're a gamer, you have been in a game at some point. Maybe you're someone who does like, have a hard time with their emotions when they're gaming, and maybe you're like toxic, as all the kids are saying, right? But I guarantee that no matter how toxic you are, you have been in a game where you've been sitting there listening to someone else and just been thinking, wow, man, like that is uncalled for. And not necessarily addressed it yourself, potentially addressed it at someone else on the team or in the game. And I think that moment, whether it happens, once a day, once a week, once a month, once in your lifetime, just reflecting on the lessons from that moment and how, what actions can you take to turn that around? I think that's huge in the teaching world, right? Like, if we look at like anti-bullying efforts is the one that sort of easily jumps to mind. But even hopefully, before you get all the way to anti-bullying, just being able to take a team that is taking a negative turn, a team of students or learners, and redirect that negative energy and turn it towards, okay, and this works in the professional field too, right? We've all been in a meeting where it gets off derailed because someone brings up like, oh, hey, there's no way we can possibly get that done by that timeline. And then the whole meeting starts to go down the rabbit hole of, well, if you guys can't get that done, then we can't get this done by that time. I think being able to recognize that, that sort of starting to spin out into that negative energy and redirect and say, hey, team, that sucks. And unfortunately, that's not going the way we want it to, but how can we attain our best positive outcome from here going forward? I think that's a skill that gamers probably have. And even if they haven't developed it a lot, they have had that moment of recognition, I guess.
Yeah, they've had a lot of opportunities to at least be on the other side of it, right? To be in that meeting where everyone's like, rah, 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 and like the clan leader or the guild leader is like, chill, guys, we're not ever going to take down Ragnaros if we're all like doing this one thing. Which, again, another plug. If you're a clan leader or a guild leader, those are like, that's like training right there for education. Yeah. Like managing, like everyone log on. Okay, now everyone, did you do your homework? Have you all memorized your rotations?
It's true. Maybe we should... This is an idea for a whole future podcast, or maybe a business. I mean, in the world of COVID-19, I think a lot of educators are experiencing this difficulty of like, oh man, like, how do I like manage my classroom and make sure kids are logged on, and how do I make sure all my documents are like loaded correctly?
You're right. We need a headhunt this.
We need clan leaders. We need a partnering system between.
Yeah. Like, well, do you have a Discord for your class? That's it. I run it through the Discord. Which, as a plug, I actually do think Discord, could be incredible for schools to explore. There's a lot of like unique things that again, that are just on the table, but that like, we can't even begin to explore the limits, the positives, the benefits, like, or the negatives, the like challenges, and how to overcome these until enough educators are on board, like can even say the word Discord. If I said Discord in like an educator convention, there'd be like 3 people who stood up and they'd be like, yeah, we know what that is. And everyone else would be like, I've never heard of it. Is that the thing my my child is on that sometimes I take it away from them? And I'm like, what is this? I don't know. So
no, yeah, I mean, that is funny though. I actually know a person who teaches undergraduate level evolutionary biology in college, and with the pandemic, he couldn't do his labs in person, so he live streamed a fish dissection over Discord and got some of the highest like participation and best grades that he's ever gotten out of a class ever. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to say that speaks volumes because everyone's experience is going to be different with it, but I do think it's an example of how a tool that would otherwise be marginalized in like the education community can totally be like flipped on its head and be made to be super, super valuable.
Oh, I'm so on. One of my favorite things as a person, if not educator, or maybe as an educator, if not as a person, is marrying the best of different fields. If you're like, okay, so you're like, well, is Discord good enough? And you're like, well, yeah, it already passed through the fact that a ton of gamers or like different are using it, and they're like, we chose this, like we had other options like TeamSpeak, and I'm trying to think of like other things that are dead now. You're like, and like we found this to be the best one, and there's a lot of there's a lot of reasons why this, and so like there's some efficiency there. There's some like, I mean, again, in every field, there's so many, when you see like what works best for this one group of people, you're like, maybe that's worth seeing how it could apply to teaching. And again, that diverse perspective of being someone in the gaming community. And Discord's now, but in 10 years there'll be a new Discord. There'll be a new blank that maybe would be transformative in the educational field, or certainly in your classroom, which I'll tell you as a teacher, that's probably where most, if you go just into teaching, like that's where your power is. But you have that power a lot of times. Like you can explore those things. I wanted to point out, so before we get farther away from it, you talked about like, what is it, like that the negative spiral maybe, or that like like we've all been there, like we've been that guy in the fountain, or we've been, if not actively complaining about this one teammate that is just letting your team down, like perhaps at least feeling those feelings and like suppressing them barely. And what I'd say is I can't express enough how much empathy certain students need and don't get, because their teachers or every adult in their school possibly, or every adult in their field haven't experienced it. And like because like this will happen, like there are some difficult experiences, some traumatic experiences, or some challenges or things like that humanity shares. And then there's like some smaller group that like people that like this thing share, and people that do this one thing share. And like, again, going with the idea that a lot of your students are going to be into gaming, like a lot of them have had, I don't know, like that. What I really feel like you bring like a whole new level of empathy when you're like, I've been there. Like I see you losing your temper over this thing, and maybe it's not a gaming related thing, crisis in your like company or in your classroom. But I think you just can really truly empathize in a real way that people without the gaming experience, maybe they arrive there by a different route, but at least you're bringing that, so there's value there.
Definitely.
Some other right. Oh yeah. Oh, okay. Do you want? I made two more listing of skills that gamers can bring to teaching and why you should consider it. Gamers listening to this. One, awesome. Multitasking. How do you feel about this? I think this is my new theory of gamers are awesome. Okay. I think gamers are good at multitasking, because I think
Charles's unified theory of gamers are awesome. Got it.
I think a lot of other hobbies, few other hobbies reward multitasking on the level that, and again, this is not speaking very generically, that like generic gaming does. Like, I have never been, so rarely in my life have I been overwhelmed with so many different meters, so many things to juggle than in like various video games. because it's artificial, right? Like in real life, that rarely like that shouldn't really be happening to you. But do you know where it happens? Is in a classroom where you have 30 meters or 35 meters being these individual students who all have their own levels of emotions and like, you know, engagement in an activity and sleepiness, and they need to use a bathroom and blah, blah. Like, to me, teaching is like, I don't know, maybe there's other jobs that are equally multitasking, but teaching is definitely one of them. And I think, how do you feel about this, I guess?
I definitely think, you know, there is something to be said for that. You know, multitasking is a skill that is perceived as being very valuable. And gaming can definitely make a better multitasker out of you. Or, you know, whether you are better at multitasking or just diverting your attention from one thing rapidly to the other, which isn't
Well, that's
quite
what,
the same.
because ultimately, you're right.
But
Humans can't truly, I've read and I've experienced, you can't really do multiple things at once. But I think
it's true.
making
Humans
those
are bad
snap
parallel processors.
priorities, like prioritization, and kind of like the heuristics of being like, deal with this,
Yeah.
deal with this, deal with this, like that flow. I mean, like anything, and the more you practice something, the better you get at it. Okay, so
Absolutely.
that, you know, juggling of your attention, that rapid prioritization of how to split, because you're right, again, not parallel processing, but I think there's a lot of overflow there. No, okay, or
no, I'm totally with you.
and then the next thing I was going to say is, again, tunnel vision, big stressful moments. Maybe this is just me. I can get like into games and I can have like incredibly, I'm thinking like PUBG, like incredibly stressful, tense moments. And I think teaching, also me as a teacher, sometimes there's like really stressful moments and like, I don't know, maybe this is just, maybe it's any job where you work with kids. There's going to be like crises where like you're so responsible. You're so like, you have to make like big decisions, sort of. I don't know. Maybe this is the wrong way of going, but like, I feel like when you're dealing with all adults, to some degree, you're like, you know, like you at most have to care about yourself in any crisis. And by crisis, I'm just talking about like really not like fires. I mean, although I guess technically fires and stuff like that, but like, you know, like big stressful, like a kid loses their temper and like kicks a, you know, throws a chair or something. Maybe that was the wrong way to go. You know, crisis management. Is that, do you think gamers are going to be especially good at that? Or is that generic?
I mean, I'd love to say that I do think gamers will be good at that.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, sorry, gamers, I love you. And I support Charles's unified theory of gamers are awesome.
Yeah.
I have to say, having been a guild or clan leader across a variety of games, I guess I would say that tunnel visioning in and you know, not knowing what to do in a moment of crisis is just as common in the gaming community as it is outside of it. Like,
but I guess what my question is, you don't think they get more practice with dealing with that? Because again, in regular life, how much do average adults get that opportunity to practice that? Like, how often are they in an accident? How often are they, you know, like someone's acting really violent and loud in like a line that they're standing? I don't know, I'm trying to think like what are real life, like mini stressful moments like that where you might tunnel vision or not, or like,
I mean, I suppose that's true.
or what other hobbies? I guess sports. Maybe this is too broad. Like sports practice that. Sports is definitely a place where like you can get tunnel vision or not. You can like deal with this like mini crisis or not, or like, or deal with it well or not. Like be more broad about it. Okay, that's fair. Where else should we go with this?
I don't know. As we're wrapping up into our final minutes here.
That's true. Well, what are the challenges of breaking into either world? Or, you know, before we do any other discussion, if this is the end of our podcast of the day, what games do you think might indicate you might be a good teacher? And we'll accept serious or not serious questions for this question. It's not serious answers for this question. What game? Yeah, you might be a good teacher if you play blank. How about that?
Are we answering this, or we're asking the listeners to?
No. Me and you are answering it right now because
okay.
Our listeners right now are artificial.
That's
simulated.
True. Simulated listeners. Hello, simulations. All right. Well, I'm gonna go with. Sorry, can you restate the context?
Yeah, it's
Because
just like
I kind of got like.
you might be a good teacher or a good candidate for teaching if you are a gamer who does this or plays this. So I'm gonna go first. Ha, I took it. If you DM, bam, that's right, callback.
Wow, that's
If you're a dungeon
my big
master,
one, man.
yeah, that's gone. So find something else.
Well, we already talked about clan and guild leaders. I think
Okay.
that shows a lot of skills with dungeon mastering. But
How about this? You might be a good teacher if you're good at RTSs. What do you think about that? Do you think StarCraft, things like that, are going to be especially? Again, this is like micromanagement. That's huge in teaching. And again, prioritizing.
I mean, I suppose
There's no bad ideas during an improv game. So that was a trick question. Your turn.
All right, I'm gonna go with. You might be a good teacher if you. I'm going to say something a bit controversial here, but I am going to say if you are a successful first-person shooter gamer.
Okay, I do need you to explain that. Although I agree with it, because again, in this improv game, you have to agree.
Okay, well, yeah, you're stuck agreeing whether you agree or not. But so there's a reason I qualified it because anyone can play an FPS game. I don't even particularly claim to be very good at them. So hopefully that doesn't remark on my teaching abilities. But I think that people who are successful FPS gamers have good reflexes, but that has no bearing on your ability to be a teacher. But what they
Many
have,
times children will throw pencils at you.
just gonna catch them there, throw them back.
Sorry, counterattack. It was a reflex. Okay, you go.
But I think what they have is they have an ability, and this goes back to what we were just talking about, tunnel visioning, to maintain a holistic, like large scale view, and more than just FPSs. I guess I'll stretch this out to like MOBAs and any other sort of large scale game where individuals can only affect small portions of the like field of play. So even this gets back to like RTSs, like you said, right? That if you have the ability to keep your eye on the bigger picture while focusing in on these smaller like crisis flashpoints and dealing with them effectively, I think that's something that's super useful in the classroom.
And the real teamwork that like in like a Counter-Strike match, like that real teamwork, that like discussions, I think like knowing someone has your back and communicating is huge. Okay, my next one. You might be a good teacher if you. Oh, I had one queued up. Should have written this down. Okay, let's just be really biased now. If you explore cutting edge technology, like virtual reality, but any cutting edge. Again, it's like being on the edge of it. I think it'd be a big advantage as a gamer. Again, you're like, you have to be ready to, or as a teacher, you have to be ready to evolve. Like teaching, you're constantly, new program comes out. You have to keep reading the same book year after year. I say, as I give my kids Lord of the Flies this week, I'm like, yeah, it's been out since the 40s. But like ideally you're exploring, always new methods, new techniques. Okay, good.
I'm actually gonna divert from the game because you just brought up Lord of the Flies. Fine. And I think I was just reading something super interesting about Lord of the Flies that I think more people should know, because kids all across our nation every year are forced to read Lord of the Flies.
Oh no, is this going to be anti what I'm doing to my kids?
I don't know. It depends on your perspective of teaching. I'm not saying every teacher teaches it the same, but I'm going to speak to my experience and an experience that I know from conversation many other people share, which is that they get forced to read Lord of the Flies, and it's sort of pitched to them as like, all right, kids, you're 13 now. You have to learn about human nature and the beast that lives within all of us, just waiting to reach out and crush the weaker members of our civilization at any moment. And I was just listening to a fascinating interview on NPR, which is why I know all of this. So big shout out to NPR. I think they're
going to sponsor us soon, right? Okay, good.
Hopefully, yeah, soon, very soon. But what this interviewer was saying is that we don't know of a lot of instances of kids actually getting like abandoned on small islands. But in the very few instances that we know of this happening in real life, it's almost the opposite is where human nature goes with it. The few instances that we have, the kids have like developed a system of governance, figured out like a work schedule rotation, developed even like games and other activities to bring it back to gaming to keep themselves occupied as they wait. And you know, to get really like feel goody about it, I think that gaming is sort of something that draws all of humanity together. And it struck me that, you know, in these few scenarios, Lord of the Flies like scenarios, instead of, you know, abandoning one another or anything like that, that these groups of humans with relatively like small knowledge and training would band together, figure out how to survive together, and that, you know, they would develop these methods of play. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say about that. But
Okay.
I hope.
I mean, that gives me a lot to think about.
Feel free
I'm
to
already,
teach Lord of the
we're already
Flies.
midway through. We can't quit. And I just tell them like,
Can't
guys,
stop now.
it's like Fortnite, but with kids, huh? They're like, this is so cringy. But yeah, you know, now that I'm thinking about it, am I giving them the wrong lesson? Like is one of the main themes of Lord of the Flies like we need order. We all need to obey authority because look what happens. We get wild without it. And then, I mean, he is writing it straight off of World War II, right? So
it's true.
Is it more of a metaphor? I haven't taught it yet. I'm only partway through. I'm not even sure what happens at the end. Just kidding. I'm a prepared teacher.
Oh yeah, and I'm sure you read Lord of the Flies growing up, right?
I mean, certainly while growing up, I do remember it. I do remember being fascinated again. And even as you were talking right now, I was like, man, I would love to read more about these kids surviving on an island. I'd love to be that person on the island. Although in this case, it'd have to be with air condition and, you know, no violence.
Fair enough. Well, you know, I just quickly Googled it because I do want to plug it. The author's name is Rutger Bregman, and his book that he's published is called A Hopeful History of Humankind. So go check it out. I think he has some really, really fascinating examples. There we go.
Wow.
We're plugging all sorts of potential future sponsors.
I know. This is how
it's a good thing to throw a wide net.
We can tag them all when we release it. We'll be like, exactly. Oh yeah, hey, you got a shout out. You have to find it though. They're like listening to like all hour. Like, wait, is that guy mispronounced my name?
All right. So we're gonna wrap it in there. Or did you have?
I guess that bookends our conversation. We ended on gaming bringing those lost children together. So, you know, that perfectly bookends us.
Well, here, I'll wrap it up for you. I'll give you a perfect
final speech. Here we go.
All right. Final monologue. I've been practicing for years for this with my DMing. We started out, right, talking about why should gamers be teachers and why should teachers be gamers? And I expressed pretty early on, you know, I think everyone is a gamer. And how this book ends us is I think that this example proves that I'm right. Everyone is a gamer. Play is something that is quintessential to human nature. It's something that, you know, you may not play in exactly the same way as someone else, but everyone can recognize the need for play in others. And so to me, that's, you know, whatever your kind of play is, just try and appreciate the play that your students are bringing to the classroom and try and enable them in tying that play together with their learning experience because it can only have positive outcomes for everyone.
I love this. And I'm going to take it, unfortunately. I'm going to add more and you can talk on that. Like, again, so many educators, they're like, oh man, Fortnite's so big, or oh, Minecraft's so big. Oh, the kids, all they want to do is play their games. I'm like, yeah. And then embrace those things. Like find how you can, if not make it directly educational, then directly community building, or, you know, bring elements that even in a joking way into like your own, you know, random math problems and things like that. I think there's just so many educators turn their nose up to it and they're like the kids are so obsessed with that thing. And you're like, so use it. Like, don't fight it. You're not going to win against Fortnite. like it'll die on its own accord. Give it a few years. So yeah.
That brings us to the end of today's cast.
We hope you had fun, learned a little, and join us next week. Don't forget to subscribe for new episodes each Tuesday.
You can also find us on social media at Plotting Podcast or on our subreddit r/plotting podcast.